Yes, welcome everybody. It's a great honor to stand before you today on this, I think, 7th consecutive Life Science Investment Day Scandinavia, and indeed the first one in this region. I represent international law firm Bird&Bird together with Ludo Deklerck, and we have a long-standing relationship and cooperation with Sweden Bio, and we're proud sponsors, of course, of this event. Together with Ludo and with Grace Chen from our office in Beijing and a handful of our colleagues from the Stockholm office, we hope to be able to bring some interesting experience and thoughts to the table today. A few words about Bird&Bird, if technology assists. Oh, here we go. Thank you. So, a few words about Bird&Bird. We started off in the 1840s as an English firm and over time developed as one of the strongest brands around for intellectual property rights. And in the 1990s started an international expansion with the first office outside London in Brussels in 1991, I believe. And further expanded. The office in Stockholm was opened in 2000, and we are today, as you can see, 23 offices in 16 countries, almost 1,000 lawyers, and we operate as one firm, of course, wherever we are. Adding to the picture, covering the Nordic region, we just recently in January signed a cooperation agreement with Danish firm Bende Halle von Dragstedt, BVHD, further increasing our network in the Nordics. We like to think of ourselves as slightly different. Surprise. And the way we think about ourselves, we operate in two dimensions. One of them being a select number or a set of select industries where we focus. And we've chosen those industries for specific reasons, basically because they meet at least 1 out of 3 criteria. We look at industries that are signified by intellectual property, regulation, and technology. And that, of course, takes us to life sciences. We believe that when you combine these aspects, you will meet some of the most difficult challenges in terms of law, and indeed that's also where cutting-edge legal advice will be able to make a real difference. And of course, to do this, it helps to understand the challenges and the issues of the specific industry. The second dimension is our practice groups, where we organize our legal skill sets and our specialization. I should say our lawyers, even junior associates, are allocated to these groups, sector and practice, and that runs through the entire operation nationally and internationally. I don't know if you ever felt anything like that, having talked to your lawyer. But what we try to do is that with our organization, we try to be able to follow you throughout your life cycle, understanding the industry within the legal practice areas of relevance and throughout the countries where we operate. And to illustrate this, just a few examples of transactions where we assisted in the last 10-12 months and really selected to show that, you know, the geographical spread, the different kinds of transactions. And I think from an investor perspective, one shouldn't focus only on the technology or structure or tax aspects of a specific investment. I think that comes second. I think first and foremost, you need to understand the patent portfolio. It's important to look at those distribution agreements, those license agreements, understand the regulatory requirements, and that's really where any investor would start. And I think this is a good illustration of that perspective. Sweden then, yes. We have an office in Stockholm. We are today 70 lawyers approximately, 14 partners. When we opened up in Stockholm in 2000, we did so by joining forces with one of the old Swedish firms, Gedda Ekdal, which was formed in 1917. I guess you know about the Jay and the Peacock, but certainly we do have some fine feathers. The nice thing about them is that they're attributed by others, and I think very proud to have received this year Årets Advokatbyrå, Law Firm of the Year for proactivity here in Sweden, and only recently Firm of the Year for managing intellectual property. I think that's the best recommendations you can get. I think it shows that what we do is right in some sense, and this also ranges into different areas, such as the Investor All-Star Service Provider of the Year a few years back. And when we get this kind of feedback, we feel that something was right in how we thought this. To summarize, is it you speeding this up? So I'm running out of time. Okay. So anyway, can't get that picture back, but to summarize, we have a life sciences group operating in our 16 countries with some 160 specialists in one firm focusing on these areas. And with those words, I'll leave to Ludo, and I wish you good luck with the pointer.
Thank you, Hans. We'll see how our moderator allows me to browse through the presentation. I was told I was given 10 minutes. So what I would like to do, my name is Ludo Deklerck. I'm a partner in the Brussels office, and thank you, Hans, for the introduction. I'm very pleased to be here this morning. This is quite a crowd. I'm impressed. That's very nice. We have something similar in Belgium, also a bio event that will take place in May. And you see the same kind of eagerness of the people attending to participate in what I think is something for the future for Europe, biotech, life science, and so forth. I quickly would like to dive into a very high-level overview of one of the things that you may not want to think about this today, because you're looking at partnerships, you're looking for money, and so forth. We are, unfortunately, lawyers. So these guys always come in with the yes and the buts and the no's and etc. So very quickly, before you can spend then the rest of the day on the happy things, when you look at attracting investment into your company, the new guy on the block potentially will want to see what you have. And so the first thing, of course, is you have to have a product, you have to have a service, you have to have adequate IP protection. We can help you with that. You have to have an adequate corporate structure. What does that mean? That means that your corporate structure should allow for the entrance of a new shareholder, of a new participant in your company. And you should be open for foreign involvement into the day-to-day management as well. The legal environment. It is important that in Sweden also a legal environment is created to allow the smaller companies, the startups, to nourish and to grow. Incentives, that's also a political debate, whether or not to allow them, and how Europe will allow you to elaborate and provide for those. And then finally, the money. Banking, banks, of course, private equity, private funding, and so forth. Key in life science is product and service, your IP protection, and of course also the regulatory compliance. Like I said, when someone news comes in, he will want to check those. He will want to see, is my money going to lead to something? Is this an interesting product? Is this something that we can make money of? Because at the end of the day, that is what it is about. And when potential new investors find that those components are in place, all other discussions will go far easier, will go far smoother. It will be much easier to focus immediately on your business plan and on the other items that you would like to discuss your future and your further development. All life sciences and biotech industries in Europe also look at the United States also for money, not just for the market, but also for the money. And then, of course, you have to take into account the legislation over there. And the Foreign Corrupt Practice Act, FCPA, is very important. What I'm telling you here is that in the last couple of years, there has been an increased legislative initiative all over the world with regard to fraud, corruption, and bribery. We have had the very important UK Bribery Act last year, which with an enormous extraterritorial reach, which has caused and is causing some issues. For instance, when you are looking to set up some trial sites in foreign countries. I just to flavor things, brought to mind the Dubuis case. I didn't see anyone from Johnson & Johnson in the audience. Back in 2011, with regard to illicit payments to Greek doctors. We can all imagine what that means. But look at the numbers in terms of penalties. Company was prosecuted and sued in the United States, and they got 2 fines. One, a financial penalty of $21 million, and another one with the SEC of $24 million. On top of that, the United Kingdom also prosecuted them, and they got a fine of 4.8 million pounds. And Greece confiscated all the assets of that company. So that's a stiff warning, I would say. Furthermore, these are the countries who in the last couple of years implemented new legislation with regard to anti-corruption, anti-fraud. You see France, May 2011. Russia, two acts. Spain amended its criminal code. China, same thing. Egypt, as new as Egypt may be, Egypt introduced a new bill in November 2011. Meaning that all of that, there's more stringency to it and increased scrutiny. Things are being controlled.
Enough in these countries?
We have reasons to believe that people are being trained and that this will follow up. A lot of all of this is driven by the fact that you're dealing with global companies that ultimately will invest or buy or participate in smaller startups. These global companies, most of them, do business with the United States, do business with the UK. Therefore, they have to apply with these laws, that's about the extraterritorial reach of those acts, force the local players in all these countries to comply. Otherwise, the ones who would like to participate will not allow or will not be able to do that.
So the global pressure is more important maybe than the undercoming pressure.
Absolutely. And that is what the Dubuis case proves. Actually, it was a company out of the US who got prosecuted in the US for something they did wrong in Greece. Yeah. With some substantial consequences. So the question, again, back to the due diligence, back to the regulatory, are your policies in place? Is the documentation available? Have you documented what it is you to do internally to prevent those? Did you do any risk assessment before engaging in any third-party agreement? And this is difficult. If you're a small company, you want to focus on your business, you want to focus on your development, you want to focus on what you need to do on a daily basis. You may be having 1 or 3 people who are in your admin office, but still, these are the kind of things you have to do. Compliance is very important, and it's about awareness, it's about training, and it's about execution. Documentation alone is not enough. Hello? All right, what else is coming? This is just a flavor, a high-level flavor of some of the issues that some of other legislative initiatives that are looming on the horizon. The first one is, and some of you may have heard about it, the draft regulation that will replace the European Directive on Data Privacy. Vivian Redding published the draft January 25 of this year, so it's very, very recent. It's directly effective as opposed to the directive with enhanced powers, and it introduces sanctions. There is the accountability that is required. I'm just going to flip through it right away. Accountability, again, prior slide, I mentioned you the need for documentation is a typical requirement on European level is to document your what it is that you're doing, document your procedures, document the initiatives that you have taken. Documentation, for instance, about the liability, the increased liability that is foreseen for the controllers, the contracts that you have with the processors, your DPO, your data privacy officer. The new draft will want you, each company, the draft currently provides for companies over 250 employees to appoint internally a data privacy officer, which is somewhat the German system as we know it today. Enhanced rights for the individuals. I just picked a few of those. Right to be forgotten. Extremely important in a number of areas, also in the healthcare sector. It basically would mean that the individual would have the right to withdraw all the data that has ever been gathered on him from the moment that either the contract is no longer valid or the duration during which the data was going to be gathered has elapsed. The Swedish Data Inspection Board said that this could be in conflict with a constitutional right, that is, publicity of the public documents, access to the documentation. That's an issue that comes up in other countries as well. Flipping through, very important, the introduction of the breach notification. If something goes wrong, if there is a breach of security with regard to the data, getting lost, getting stolen, even your system being corrupted, there will be a need to notify, in first instance, a public authority within 24 hours. Now, for smaller companies, the typical smaller SMEs in Europe, it's horrifying, but let me tell you, in the States, that's what they do. That's what they have to do. So this is not new. Failure to notify in time without a valid excuse will be fined in the future. One of the things that is important too is the processors. We're going to a system whereby the difference or the distinction between controllers and processors is going to blur away. Basically, processors will have the same liabilities or will be held co-liable with the controller. So for a controller, it will be very important to negotiate that right up front. Again, problems with the consent. The draft regulation provides that consent should be given freely and unambiguously, meaning that you not always know, for instance, with a patient, whether he is really free to give his consent on certain issues. And that's the last one, perhaps, if you really want to cut me short here, the fines. The initial draft provided up to, for corporations, up to 5% of your global turnover. They reduced it to 2%. That will be a matter of discussion further on. But let me tell you that the system will have sanctions. Until now, there was no real sanctioning, not real teeth to whatever was provided either on a European or on a national level. But this means trouble. It means that companies will have to comply, will have to make sure that they have everything in place. For instance, if you do not have your documentation in place, you can be fined up to 1% of your worldwide turnover. Again, this is common law. We look at something that may take between 2 to 4 years before it's actually implemented in the member states. But my impression is that Vivian Reding, as well as the Danish presidency, will want to push this forward. This is a top priority. There is a need for, according to them, to better protect individuals, the data subjects, also because of the new business model in the internet, cloud computing. Cloud computing today, what you see in many contracts is that they suggest sort of a licensing agreement, and I'm very sorry, it's not a software license. It's far more than that. It will have to take into account what is coming. And I would like to stop there because I still have a few other items.
Thank you very much.
Course, if I may round off, we of course, if you haven't scheduled meetings with Ludo, myself, Grace, or coming to one of the meetings or meeting one of the other colleagues from the Stockholm office, please feel free to approach us at the stand and make contact. Thank you.
Please. Thank you very much.